figures like Andrew Tate have always been maligned to place an impassable threshold around systems of influence and power.
And now we got to talk about some right-wing influencers, primarily Russell Brand and Candace Owens, who are, for some bizarre reason, deciding to defend the indefensible, aka Andrew Tate. The backstory for this segment that you need to understand is that the MAGA influencer Benny Johnson recently hosted Andrew Tate for an interview. Andrew Tate being this internet superstar who's like an alpha male, who, as he describes himself, but is in truth incredibly toxic, incredibly misogynistic, incredibly anti-Semitic for sure. He just tweets calling people Jews randomly all the time. He's a really controversial person with a very sordid past. He's on camera repeatedly talking about how he pimped out women, about how he hits and abuses women physically. It's all in his own words on tape. He's been recording himself and posting it on the internet for years, making stunning admissions of his own wrongdoing. And yet, Benny Johnson and one of Trump's top lawyers had an interview with Tate where they basically gave him a 45-minute tongue bath. There was no scrutiny, tough questions. This wasn't journalism. This was just promotion. This was just simping for him, just being basically fangirling over him. And they've come in for a lot of criticism over that. In fact, it's been kind of heartening to see many people on the right, from Ben Shapiro to many others, criticizing them for doing this and criticizing Andrew Tate and pointing out that a self-professed pimp, pornographer, and abuser of women is not, in fact, a champion in line with conservative values in any real sense. But some influencers on the kind of new online right have decided to defend Tate in ways that I don't understand why they're doing it and make very little sense. For example, here is the actor turned political commentator Russell Brand, who isn't like a traditional right-winger. His ideas and politics are kind of all over the place, but at least his home these days is sort of on the new online right. Take a listen to his defense of Andrew Tate.
Someone like Andrew Tate, with the audience he has, could make a significant difference if correctly backed. He does say some stuff that's pretty out there, but the fact is, in a democracy, if someone is able to glean popular support, they can have a mandate, they should be represented. I suppose what's more significant and interesting to me is the way that figures like Andrew Tate or Tommy Robinson have always been maligned, I think, to place an impassable threshold around systems of influence and power. You can have your own views of Andrew Tate. You might think he's misogynistic or vulgar, but the fact is he appeals to a lot of people and he represents some things that a lot of people are very interested in.
Yeah, so that did not make a lot of sense. First, Russell seems to describe Tate as if the controversy surrounding him is just things he's said, just controversial ideas he has or hot takes he's put out there in the world, but it's about a lot more than that. We're not just talking about tweets that hurt people's feelings, although, him just calling people Jews and slurs all the time on Twitter is not admirable behavior. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that he is very seriously, with ample evidence, including voice notes and text messages where he basically admits to doing it, accused of strangling women, accused of violating them physically and sexually, all without their consent. We're talking about the fact that he is a self-professed pimp and pornographer who, on video after video after video, talks about harming women. This is about his actions and his history and who he is as a person and what image he presents to the world. It's not about him having offensive takes. That's just a complete misconstrual of what the backlash is about here. And I don't actually think that Andrew Tate speaks for a lot of people. He had a moment a couple years ago, but I'm going to put the Google Trends chart on the screen here. His moment passed. Interest in him is largely over, except apparently from right-wing influencers who think they can still use him to get some clicks or some attention or kick off controversy, which it does work to that extent. But the idea that he's some sort of guru or speaking for millions of people at this point seems to me to no longer be true. And I don't think the reason that he's getting so much backlash and people are trying to marginalize him from the mainstream right isn't because he's a threat to power or that he threatens powerful institutions and that's why he's being canceled. Lots of people threaten establishment institutions, but aren't getting this pushback. It's because he harms women and boasts about it online, and people are bothered by that, especially many conservatives who say they believe in family values and traditional masculinity and all this stuff that is so at odds with this interesting figure here in Andrew Tate. And I just have to say, Russell Brand has faced criminal investigation and allegations of sexual misconduct. And I said, like I say with everybody, that he deserves due process and he shouldn't be assumed to be guilty. But it is not a great look when you are immediately hopping to the defense or to make excuses for somebody who we know has harmed women. In his own words, he's admitted it many times. That's not a great look if you've also been accused of wrongdoing, in that it doesn't paint you in the best light in terms of your own innocence. Still, he deserves a fair treatment, a fair process, like everyone does, but it's not a good look, my dude. Now, Russell Brand was not the only one who hopped on the train to defend Andrew Tate after all this belated criticism. Candace Owens, the popular YouTuber and podcaster, also chimed in defense of Benny Johnson's tongue bath for Andrew Tate. Here's what she had to say. The people who have made their careers purporting to care about the free market of ideas and speech are now all telling Benny Johnson that he shouldn't speak to Andrew Tate. Take note, conservatives. Yeah, the point went over her head on this one. Very few people were telling Benny Johnson that he shouldn't speak to Andrew Tate. Basically, none of us on the right were criticizing, for example, Piers Morgan when he interviewed Tate and grilled him on his beliefs, on his radical views, on his past comments, on the allegations against him. No, what we're saying is that if you are a self-professed Christian conservative family man like Benny Johnson, that you should not uncritically promote and cheerlead for and fangirl for a self-avowed pimp, pornographer, and credibly accused with lots of evidence harmer of women. That's not the same thing as saying no open debate, no free speech, cancel him. We're not calling for him to be censored. We're not calling for him to be taken off X. We're not calling for Benny Johnson to be banned either. We're saying that very influential right-wing figures shouldn't use their platform to uncritically promote terrible people who've done terrible things and promote terrible messages. That's not anti-free speech. That's about discernment. It's about gatekeeping your own movement and not letting crazy people infiltrate it. What's so strange about this to me is Candace Owens is the first one to talk about how she thinks porn is the worst thing ever for society. She goes, very overstates the case for me, although I certainly think porn can be harmful, but she's so anti-porn, yet also cheerleads for and promotes Andrew Tate. She's had him on her show for softball interviews. She's championing him here. And it's like, you know, he made all his money in porn, right? In manipulating and allegedly coercing women into doing porn for him. That's your man? That's the person you're going to die on the hill defending? The math is not mathing for me from Russell or from Candace here at all. But I think to some extent, they both have kind of fallen into this trap of anti-establishmentarianism where the establishment gets a lot of things wrong and deserves to be criticized for a lot of things, but it's not always wrong. And when you decide to become kind of such an anti-establishment person that you just reflexively defend anyone the establishment doesn't like, anything the establishment says is wrong, you also end up in some very strange places and not actually getting closer to moral or factual truth. At least that's my take. What do you guys think? Do any of you disagree with me? Do any of you agree with Candace and Russell? I do want to hear you out. I will read the comments and check out your pushback. As long as we keep it respectful and thoughtful, always open to different opinions around here. And we'll leave it there for today. Make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit that like button before you go. And we'll talk again on Thursday.